coming up on today's episode, 2022.8 is here. There's some news for Home Assistant Yellow users, and the cloud strikes again.
Hey everyone, welcome to Home Assistant Podcast. This is episode 2022.8. As usual, I'm joined with my good friend Phil Hawthorne. Hey Phil.
Hey Rohan, how's it going?
Good. So, just as a reminder, this episode is sponsored by the Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. Easily access your local Home Assistant instance remotely for a small monthly fee that supports the Home Assistant project and ESP Home as well. Configuration is all done in the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certificates, or anything else like YAML.
All right. 2022.8, Rohan. Can you believe
That's it.
that?
It's here.
That
means it's August.
It does, unfortunately. Well, where's that year gone? We keep saying that every release episode, right?
But, I know.
It keeps getting away from us. So huge feature that I think is in 2022.8 is the new repairs that are here.
Mm-hmm.
Home Assistant have done I guess the one issue they've got is a lot of people asking for support in Home Assistant, right? Like, oh, this isn't working. Yeah. This device has stopped. I've got a breaking change. Generally, something has changed a few releases ago. No one's reading the breaking changes, or they have to listen to things like podcasts to find out what those big breaking changes are going to be. And they're not, all tailored to specific things. So with the repairs area in Home Assistant now, when you upgrade, if there is a deprecation or a breaking change that is particular to something that you've activated in your configuration, there will be an alert will show up in the settings area. Go in there and it will actually tell you how to fix the problem. So, for example, I've just upgraded to 2022.8 and I have the Google Calendar integration enabled, which has some settings in my YAML file. Straight away, Home Assistant has said, you need to remove this. We've imported the settings into the user interface. You can just remove it from your YAML now. And if you don't do this, it will break as of, I think it's the September release. So
that's pretty cool. So is it the same thing that used to be in the event log that now is kind of populated in a dedicated area for things that are broken?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So because no one's like, the event log is very technical, I guess.
Sure.
It's got a whole bunch of debug information and warnings.
Tons of stuff. Yeah.
This actually gives you ways to fix it. So there's a whole bunch of different use cases for this. I think. Yeah. Do you remember they brought out alerts.homeassistant.io, which was designed, in case a cloud provider decides to go down, they can actually issue, okay, this is an alert for you. That now comes in to these areas as well. So let's say tomorrow you're running a particular version of a Philips Hue bulb that's got a security vulnerability. Mm-hmm. Home Assistant knows that you're using that version of the Philips Hue bulb. They can put an alert out and it will then show up as a notification in your instance saying, hey, you need to do this to fix this sort of thing.
Right. Which is actually pretty cool. So now it's one stop rather than having to look at alerts, rather than having to look in the log, rather than having to look in a bunch of places and or figure it out yourself. Hopefully this is now, it gets everybody essentially a ton of information for not a whole lot of effort. So no, it's great to see.
So, and hopefully that'll reduce a whole bunch of support requests. Why is this broken? Well, it's broken because of this. Now it will be just, here you go. This is how you fix this issue.
Yeah. And so it also looks like a lot of the persistent notifications, again, they're moving to repairs. So I wonder if there's going to be some automation capability, like let's say you do want some persistent notifications if it's of whatever type of repair, right? So I wonder if we can actually push those back in.
No, so they're trying, I think, and I asked sort of opposite on the Creators Network chat that we had this week. Yeah. So they're moving the persistent notifications that are, that should be as an alert into the alerts, right? And the alerts are designed that you shouldn't be they require action from you.
Yeah.
But you can dismiss them like you can a persistent notification. They'll then come back, I believe, in the next major release that you upgrade to. So they will persist along, every restart until you upgrade to the next major release.
Okay.
So I asked, can a user do a call, like a service call, to create an alert themselves? So let's
Yeah.
say, an alarm panel has been triggered. You want to have an alert in Home Assistant so that a little card comes up. So that still should be done through the persistent notifications area.
Okay.
So persistent notifications should really be moving towards less critical things. So, when they've discovered a new device on your network, that'll be a
Yeah.
persistent notification, or anything that a user wants to do. So an alarm got triggered or an invalid login attempt, that'll go through as a persistent notification that you can
Cool.
then still use that service call for.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. So there's it's not being replaced. It's not being removed in any way, but it's just slight functionality change.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right. Yeah, that's actually a pretty interesting one. I like that a lot. All right, moving on. Native Bluetooth support. So there is a brand spanking new Bluetooth integration that allows Home Assistant to see and integrate it with Bluetooth devices. So again, same way that we do with Zigbee, Z-Wave, Z-Wave, Wi-Fi devices, so on and so forth. I guess your device, whatever you're using, needs to have some kind of a Bluetooth radio passed through to it or connected to it directly. And once you get that, then Home Assistant can talk to Bluetooth, right? And then there's also going to be Bluetooth discovery. So what's cool is, for example, my Flora, which are the little plant sensors. So today I've actually got an ESP Home that's I've got ESP32 that's running ESP Home. Flash to say, hey, you know what? Look for these my Flora devices, whatever. So it sounds like I'm not going to need that anymore, and it sounds like
That's right.
I can just natively have it going. Now my problem is going to be I don't have enough USB ports to put a radio in, but in theory I can do that.
Or, your Home Assistant instant, like your Home Assistant blue or yellow, is going to be hiding in a server rack somewhere in the garage where not close enough. No, this is actually cool, and it's actually another really big change. It doesn't just affect like the Xiaomi stuff. There's a whole bunch of new integrations in this release. I think there's a few broken changes that we'll get to a bit later as well. But I'm just going to jump ahead to the next one because I think this is related. It's HomeKit Bluetooth support. So there is now also support for HomeKit over Bluetooth, which is incredible. So if you've got a Bluetooth device that is HomeKit enabled, Home Assistant will just show the device as discovered.
Amazing.
Which is cool. So I'm guessing all those new Philips Hue bulbs that have Bluetooth in them, that should now just pop up and say, hey, here's a Philips Hue bulb, connect to it. I assume Apple's not happy with this, but fantastic,
Whatever.
right? Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Bluetooth. Just as a whole, I'd much rather do Zigbee, Z-Wave, or maybe even Wi-Fi over it. I just find Bluetooth typically unreliable.
Now, I'm going to show my HomeKit ignorance here, but my understanding of this is that if Home Assistant sees a Bluetooth device is available for connection with HomeKit, can't then through the HomeKit protocol, Home Assistant tell that device, hey, this is the Wi-Fi network to join, or this is how you connect to HomeKit in this house? So therefore, it doesn't need to fall back to Bluetooth, or have I just completely misunderstood how HomeKit actually works?
I think you just invented a new technology.
Right. Okay.
No, I mean, I'm not sure either because I don't know how HomeKit does that handoff. But I mean, in theory, if it prefers wireless, then it'll probably just connect through wireless anyways. I would think, but maybe if you can send Bluetooth commands through this with HomeKit, then maybe that's something that that would happen? I don't know. That's a great question for Rosemary, who we had last episode.
Yeah,
uh,
she's probably listening to this episode right now, going like, "Grr, like you
yeah,
guys just don't understand iOS, right?" Yes.
that's right. That's right. So, but I mean, from that perspective, I think, you know, could they do that? Maybe potentially, right? But I'm sure if the functionality is there and our connectivity can do that, then great, right? Why wouldn't it?
Yeah. So something else that is coming out in this release is what's called supported brands. So right now in Home Assistant, you might find that you have picked up a device and you're not sure whether or not it is compatible with Home Assistant. You may have heard that it is, but you can't find the integration. What you can do is now you can go into the device panel or into the devices and integrations area of Home Assistant, and you can search for some supported brands that would then come through via another integration. So a couple of those are the Marantz and the Luxaflex brands. They actually can be supported in Home Assistant, but you need to enable another random integration for it to work. Right? They talk the same language, or they're just a white label of that company.
Right.
So Home Assistant are bringing out these supported brands. It is going to be like a curated list of brands, though. I actually asked the question, Tuya devices have gone to so many brands around the world. I think even just here in Australia, right, there's like, I know of
Yeah.
probably named 7 off the top of my head that are all Tuya underneath. But no, because there's so many Tuya brands, they're not going to bring in the Tuya brands into Home Assistant. But you can expect things like, I think, Marantz or Luxaflex, one of them might come in through Hunter Douglas as the Hunter Douglas component in Home Assistant. So things like that, where they, random geographic inconsistencies, maybe. Maybe in the UK they're under one brand, in the US they're different. That's what this is going to be addressing now.
Got it. That's pretty neat, actually.
Yeah. Once again, I guess with the repairs and the supported brands, this is just trying to reduce the number of questions, I guess, the community asks, or people come to people in the community to get answers for. How can I integrate this or that? So just being able to sort of help people at where at the time they're getting the problem is really good to see.
Yeah, that is neat. All right, let's talk some new integrations. So Inkbird. So the Inkbird integration. So essentially, it's a company that makes like Bluetooth thermometers, smart sensors, grill thermometers, things like that. But essentially, it's a Bluetooth-based sensors for the most part, right? And they'll actually be discovered automatically by Home Assistant too. So speaking to our previous point, so there's a new Inkbird integration coming in, and that would be pretty interesting. I feel like there's a lot of like smart thermometers coming in. I don't know. I know this is definitely not the first or second one that we've talked about. Like, there's been a couple that we've talked about in the
There's
last
been a
few
few.
months. A lot of I don't know. I guess it's
I think
summertime
we
here in
saw
North
one.
America, so a lot of grilling.
I think there was one that we saw. Maybe I mentioned to you like privately, or someone on the show we're talking about it. There's this really expensive one. It was like $1,000. It was ridiculous. Like, I can't remember.
Yeah.
It was ridiculously expensive, right? And I'm like, why? I don't need a thermometer to be that pricey, right? And it had like, it was cloud dependent and all that.
Yeah.
But I would, if I can get my barbecue into Home Assistant, I've got like a random Weber grill thermometer that I think talks over 433 megahertz, so I could probably hack it if I wanted to. Yeah, but let's be honest, I'm more likely to just buy a Bluetooth one that can integrate straight with Home Assistant if I can save myself some time.
Yeah, I definitely bought a thermometer like 6 years ago on Prime Day or something like that for like $4. It's old school. It's got a probe and it's got a thermometer.
It beeps at you when it tells you it's done, right? Like that's what
exactly.
you need.
But it is cool. I've got like a poultry setting. It's got a pork setting, whatever, depending on what I'm cooking, and it'll just yell at you and. Cool, I know it's done. So it's little more old school. Would I love to have that in here? Sure, because then I'd love to be able to come inside and be like, have my Amazon Echoes go off, being like, "Hey, man, your whatever food is done." That'd be kind of cool. But I don't know. I also refuse to spend money on that, so just because I'm like, oh, it's so much money
Yeah,
that I don't like. Again, if it's affordable, if it's like, again, I don't know how much you think bird ones are or anything like that, but if it's like the one where we saw last time, which was like, I don't know, $500 or like $1,000, something like that, I'm not spending that much on a thermometer. 30
no,
bucks, 50 bucks, sure, fine.
yeah. But then
But
again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like as long
yeah,
unless your meat's coming out the wrong temperature.
I also feel like I don't barbecue enough to justify that.
Same, yeah.
It's I wish I did more. I just don't.
Yep.
So,
I
but
think James O'Callaghan has done something crazy. I think I saw him on Twitter. He's done like a whole new automated barbecue or something. I don't know if it's like lights itself or something, but I'm pretty sure he had some form of, grill
yeah,
temperature probes in there as well. Right. So I'll
yeah.
have to go
James,
check that.
just send me one.
Yeah.
Thanks, bud. just do it
uh,
for me. No,
Something else that's coming to Home Assistant is Moat.
mhm.
So I think these are also Bluetooth. So S2 smart temperature and humidity sensors. So they'll get supported in Home Assistant now. Good to see.
Yeah. Next DNS. So it's a DNS service that protects you from different security threats, ads, trackers, so on and so forth. So the next DNS integration actually allows you to monitor statistics and control some configs and stuff too. So it's nice because it's a single panel kind of UI at that point, right? Where everything runs through your Home Assistant dashboard at that point.
I assume it's like a replacement for AdGuard or of that similar ilk,
Yeah.
but
So
maybe
it's
cloud based, I'm guessing.
exactly. So it's, I mean, OpenDNS is similar to there's a bunch, right? Where typically a lot of these devices use DNS for, or sorry, a lot of these services use DNS for resolution. So it's, for example, like any ad, I'm going to,
Yeah.
I don't know, like double click or whatever, right? So those kind of companies, it's just essentially black holes the DNS for that. So
Yep.
if you see like whatever doubleclick.net or whatever their stupid URL is, then it'll just go in and say, nah, here's a
not for you.
blank page instead, or whatever, right? Like I don't know what they do, but something like that.
Raspi. So I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. The Raspi integration allows you to use your Raspi voice assistant with your Home Assistant installation. So they are an open source, fully offline set of voice assistant services for many human languages. I would like to know what other
So
types
no
of languages they would
Klingon,
support.
no like.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's funny.
But cool to see that it's fully offline. I might,
Yeah.
if I've got a spare Raspberry Pi around, I might have to take a look at that.
Yeah, I guess it would need to integrate with your speakers and stuff around the house too. So to say, hey, go announce blah 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 or whatever.
I don't know. Maybe I'm still like gun shy. Like I just remember before cloud speech to text,
Almonds.
just how wrong. Yeah,
was,
like just how wrong that can be, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking like Windows 2000 XP ish. Like trying to dictate
Microsoft
text
Sam.
into.
Yeah.
Right. Like you would say something, and of course I've got an
Yeah.
Australian accent, so I'd sometimes have to fake an American accent to get the words that I wanted to be correct. I just feel as though these local voice assistants would be similar.
I think it's come a long way. I think there's different like models and stuff under the covers, hopefully, right? That can actually understand different accents and stuff. Because obviously, even though everybody might be speaking one language, it might not be. I mean, in this one case, they've got many human languages, I guess.
Yeah.
But assumably, one language also comes with a plethora of different accents or different, how you say certain words and things like that, right? Also, a lot of mispronunciations, right? So
and even just trying to get this podcast transcripted using like an automated service, right? Like we use some terminology here, like Zigbee, Z-Wave, ESP Home, even Home Assistant, right? The computer just doesn't know what to do with that and spits out some garbage. So I don't.
Yeah, if it's not a dictionary word, if it's a brand name, like again, we're talking about Raspberry or Raspi, whatever.
Yeah.
That's not a dictionary word. Right? It's a brand name at this point, right? So it's probably going to get transcripted really poorly.
Yeah.
And same with how things come back to, right? It's like occasionally you'll see that in GPS and stuff where it tries to pronounce like a whatever name that's not, maybe not a common name, or maybe not based on dictionary words or something like that, or English
Yeah.
dictionary words, right? Specifically, right? So
We have a street in Melbourne, very famous, in the city, called Flinders Street.
okay,
It's got Flinders Street Station, very famous railway station, I believe. And for quite some time, the Google Australian accent, it might have been in Waze, it might have been in Google Maps, would always
yeah,
pronounce it as Flinders.
yeah,
And my wife and I would always get a kick, turn
yeah,
right
yeah,
at
yeah.
Flinders Street, right? Like, so I'm sure that happens, everywhere, right?
I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. This next one we talked about a little bit, Xiaomi BLE. So essentially now the BLE protocol is in there. So again, things like your Xiaomi Mi Flora, any of those Bluetooth Xiaomi devices that broadcast on Bluetooth. And essentially it'll let you track its latest sensor values and so on and so forth. So you don't need to pull it and wake it up and things like that, which does kill the battery a little bit, right? So so it can do its own thing where essentially the sensor that you're running just sits there and you're not hitting it. It tells you, which is great.
All right, time for some breaking changes. The
Yeah.
first one has to do with material design icons. So, material design icons have removed a whole bunch of icons from their library, mostly around brand names. So, if you're particularly relying on brand names, they've been removed. I believe Home Assistant is flagging this as a breaking change, but they put like it's not going to be a breaking change for 2 releases. So I think as of 2022.10 or the next major release, you'll start seeing a lot of these icons going away. So yeah, just take a look at the material design icons library. I think they had a decision. Things like Netflix, Apple, Spotify. They're all company logos, right? This is an
There
open
might be
source
some
project.
copyright reasons
Exactly.
and stuff too.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely check that out. Just make sure if you are relying on that, there's probably going to be, you may be able to use 2 versions or something. I'm sure there'll be somewhere in the community, if you need to get those icons back in, there'll be a way around, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right, LifeX. So each LifeX device now has its own integration entry. So all the existing entries will be migrated. So it'll automatically create new entries automatically. So as each device comes in and gets discovered, so you don't need to worry too much about it. But essentially, if you're not doing anything with it, but if you are, like again doing automations and things like that, you might want to look at those entries and make sure they do correspond with what you're expecting them to. Also, LifeX can now be configured with manual IP addresses. Also, again, alongside DHCP, HomeKit, and native discovery. So when the device updates its, let's say, IP address or something like that, it'll be fine. But you can also manually pop it in, and then those will actually get updated via DHCP and HomeKit and or whatever native discovery they use, right? So I think it's SSDP or something like that. So whatever that uses, then it should find it.
And SwitchBot. So the Bluetooth integration must be enabled before SwitchBot can be used. So Bluetooth is automatically discovered in most cases, but can be manually added from the integrations page if it is not. So I'm guessing, as long as you've got a Bluetooth radio pass through your Docker container, or if you're using, like a Raspberry Pi or Home Assistant OS, one of those dedicated hardware boxes, that will, enable Bluetooth. But yeah, I'm guessing just with this Bluetooth changes, this release, you'll need to make some. You'll need to make sure that Bluetooth is enabled.
There you go.
All right, Rohan. Shall we play this for a little? All right, Cloud strikes again. This one is actually, I must say, I am quite shocked by this one. So Hive have started emailing their customers, just telling everyone that their smart home devices are going to be stopped working soon, and there's nothing they can do about it. So Hive are probably best known for their smart thermostats. I think they're pretty big in the UK. So as of September 1st, 2023, the Hive leak will stop functioning. Just that's it, dead. And by August 1st, 2025, so 3 years away, all of their cameras and security system will stop functioning. So I assume that's got to also include things like door sensors and motion sensors and all that, right?
Yeah,
I
I
really can't.
would think, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
But the kicker here is that when Hive decided to email all their customers, they said, "Hey, um, as a smart tech brand in the middle of a climate crisis, uh, we know our focus needs to change. So we've made the tough decision. I mean, it must have been really tough for their financial team, right? To discontinue our smart security and leak detection products and develop smart home tech that'll get us closer to net zero." Um, so they're creating a ton of e-waste. Like they're just basically saying,
Yeah.
here's some bricked e-waste devices that you can't use. Throw them in the bin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
well,
That's that's not
and
smart devices. I will say do generate, because again, a lot of things run on batteries and things like that.
Yep.
So sure, I get it. But really, to your point, like, Phil, like you're bricking these devices. So I have something that effectively didn't necessarily need to be e-waste or didn't need to be e-waste yet.
Yep.
But you're forcing me, and realistically, people will say, "Okay, great. Well, I have this smart thermostat. I got to get rid of this, and I'll just replace it with something else." Right? And so now I'm just doubling up my e-waste, which is just like, look, I get companies change directions, I get all that stuff, and I will again give a shout out to Hive for not being like, hey everyone, you have 30 days and figure it out, right? We've seen a lot of companies that or like Insteon just not say anything, just pull their shutters, and like a week later be like, oh yeah, sorry, we died. And then obviously Insteon got bought back out by a lot of their by their user base and so on, right? Where now it's a subscription again, whatever. But so again, shout out for not doing that, giving ample time for people to move off of that platform, whatever. Again, PSA, if you're looking, this is a great reason to move towards again Zigbee, Z-Wave. Again, maybe even Bluetooth, depending on how those devices connect, and depending on what your, the distances in your home and things like that. I do prefer Zigbee Z-Wave just because there are meshing too. So the more you have, the stronger it gets. But yeah, it's I don't know. I think the reason is not a good reason.
Right? No, not at all. I think this is the classic, people not understanding or companies not understanding, how much cloud infrastructure costs.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you need to constantly buy more hardware to just like to keep that cloud income coming in. What I really love is the Hive, I believe, is like related somehow, like in corporate structure or part of the family of companies that has UK gas and electricity supplier British Gas.
Oh, interesting. I had no idea.
So yeah, I read that in a Verge article about this. So could be, not sure. I'm hoping their fact checking was
treat that for as accurate as the Verge may or may not be, right? So
yeah, but yeah, that's interesting, right? Like here's a British gas company saying, "Hey, we want to solve the climate issue by bricking all these devices." Which I don't know, just create an API, let people open up the technology at least with firmware updates so people can salvage some of this stuff. Otherwise, it is just going to go in the bin, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, exactly. If your mandate is to get you closer to net zero, fine. Whatever is here is already here.
Yep.
Great. At least let people use it so they don't have to throw it out, so that you're not creating more e-waste, because people are just going to go back out and buy the new next version of it. As disgruntled as they may be about it, people are just going to go out and buy it, right?
Yep.
Or at least most, maybe not everybody, but most people, right? Yeah.
Shout out to Sebastian on Twitter for pinging me on that one. yeah, it's unfortunately, yeah, it is sad that it strikes again. Unfortunately, yeah, as we always say, this won't be the last one. There will be another company, and there's probably heaps that we just
Yeah.
don't get to see or hear about as well that would do it.
Well,
Um,
we always find these things come in batches. So, next episode, look out for another one.
that's
It,
it.
it, al- it always goes up and down, right? We'll see like one, and then we'll put an episode out, and literally the next day we'll see another one. The day the
Yep.
episode releases, or a couple of days after we're done recording, we'll see. Oh, these people also did. This company also is killing something or whatever that's cloud based, and so on, right? So
Part of me
hopefully the
also
pattern
thinks that
doesn't continue.
is
But
by design, in
you think
terms of
it's
maybe.
seasonal?
Well, maybe not seasonal, but maybe like companies are just like looking at each other like across the room, and they're like, "Who's going to blink first, right?" And then as soon as someone blinks, they're like, "Okay, now quick announce, um, now, so that we
Maybe.
don't get the full force of the media storm that's coming this way."
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know. I mean, I think it'll take. I think it takes time to make a decision to say, hey, we want to kill a product like this, right? Especially if that's part of your core business, because again, obviously that will affect the bottom line. It will affect revenue, so on and
mm,
so forth. Um, so I don't know, but it is interesting. I'd love to see how or why that is. Just again, just out of straight interest, but yeah, who knows?
should we have some happier news?
Yeah, let's do some a little bit happier news. So Home Assistant Yellow, those should start shipping soon, hopefully. So the first batch of 2,046 units are on their way to the backers right now. The PoE units are a little bit behind, so they're being delayed again. So potentially October, maybe a little bit later. Um,
It's
but
interesting that whole it's like so the problem with the PoE adapters sounds like it's to do with emissions. So trying to power a device
yeah,
through Ethernet can be a little bit tricky. I saw, I think it was either the Home Assistant Twitter or maybe it was Zach or someone, one of the devs at Home Assistant posted Home Assistant Yellow actually in this room getting tested.
yeah,
Um, for all the emissions, and yeah, it just unfortunately didn't pass the test, so it's back to the drawing board
yeah,
on that, which is cool because I do like the idea of this Home Assistant Yellow being a completely just one cord, like the Ethernet cord, plugging into it
yeah,
and powering it, right? Um, yeah, so it is delayed again. I believe if you do want to switch over to like the standard power Home Assistant Yellow units, they've got another batch of those coming in soon that you can potentially switch over to if you don't want to wait for a PoE version.
yeah. That's pretty. That's pretty cool. Again, I'm a big fan of PoE. Again, just keep in mind if you do that when you reboot your Switch or something like that, or whatever PoE
Interesting.
piece you have there, that will get restarted, right? Because unless you have some level of industrial one where it keeps it up or something like that. But yeah, from a PoE perspective, I prefer it because realistically, if my Switch is going down, everything else is going down too, anyways. So it's
Yeah.
because my access points are PoE and so on. So I have no nothing is going to connect to Home Assistant anyways. So I'm not super afraid about it. Just the only thing that'll go down at that point is my Zigbee stuff, but
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah, it makes sense. So Rohan, I do want to talk about something that I discovered, I think,
Yeah.
like a couple of hours just before we started this recording, so it's
Okay.
still very fresh. So I think in the last episode I talked about Zigbee power monitors, wanting more things that I can monitor electricity around, trying to stick away from Wi-Fi or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, there is a custom component called Powercalc that I found. It's available in HACS. If you want to look it up, I'll leave links in the show notes. But what I really like about this is it allows you to calculate uh, devices and their energy usage if they don't have native energy monitoring support. So, good use case for this is Philips Hue light bulbs. So I have a few of these around the house, and the PowerCalc has a library of known devices,
Mm-hmm.
and it will know, okay, when the light is on at this brightness, at this color, you're using approximately this amount of energy to power that bulb. Powercalc will then expose that to Home Assistant as an energy usage. So then you can add it to things like your energy dashboard. Straight out of the box. Really, really cool. There's also the ability to define custom rules. So if you know this device in your smart home uses this amount of energy when it's in this mode or whatever, you can then put those numbers in as a custom definition, and PowerCalc can then tell Home Assistant, okay, while the dishwasher is in this state, it is using this amount of power, for example.
Right. So for example, that means, because I just quickly looked it up, Googled it, whatever, and it looks like it's primarily supported devices are smart bulbs.
Yes.
Right. So again, like when I mean that, I mean like right out of the box, it'll find it and it'll say, hey, this is what it's doing.
Yep. So I've got a Philips Hue. So I've got a Philips Hue light strip. I've got a Philips Hue Bloom, a couple of Philips Hue A16 bulbs, all straight away detected through this, and they've added in their entities. I do have some nano leaf canvas lights. You can probably see them in the camera behind me if you're on YouTube. They were not detected, which I understand. It depends on the configuration, how many panels you've got. I totally can understand that. But it does. Yeah, it looks like they're just starting with light bulbs at the moment.
So does it bring it into the actual entity itself?
Not so. It creates
a helper.
Or
not
potentially.
A helper, I guess.
It creates a new sensor entity. So for example, I have the Office Bloom. So that's that now gets Office Bloom _ power, Office Bloom _ energy as a new sensor, which I can then add to the Home Assistant energy dashboard.
Right. Because I was going to see in essentially under the device if it adds it as like a diagnostic or something like that, right?
No,
not there. So it's kind of still part of my like bulb 1, bulb 2 kind of thing. So it's like power 4, bulb 1 rather than a separate. It's not the biggest deal, but it's kind of cool. But if it did, but it sounds like there is a way to, like, again, so for myself, where I don't use smart bulbs, I use smart switches, right? Like I use my Lutron switches and stuff. But again, I know that the wall switch in the room I'm in turns on and off my office light bulb, right? And I know, those are approximately, I don't actually know what I put in there, but like whatever watt bulbs and stuff like that. So sounds like I can input that and it'll say, hey, you're using about blah.
Yep, I believe so.
Cool. Okay.
And I actually have just looked. By the looks of it, it does add them against the device entity. So I can now see, if I go in and look at the Office Bloom, for example, in my Home Assistant, I can see, hey, here is that it's using 0.006 kilowatt hours, 0.29 watts,
right?
Which I assume has come from PowerCalc, because that doesn't come through natively from Zigbee. So yeah, it's there.
Nice. So there you go. That's pretty handy then. So you can at least start pinpointing down stuff, right? So
yeah, exactly. I had a rather shockingly high electricity bill, so energy is going to be my focus for a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to be able to identify as much as I can. One thing I'd love to be able to see, and maybe I just haven't digged far enough, is doesn't seem as though there's a sensor in Home Assistant. So Home Assistant knows how much my electricity has cost through the day when I look through the energy dashboard, because I've got my component that tells me what the price of electricity is, and I have the how much my house is using as energy being tracked from the meter. So Home Assistant can say, all right, for this day you've used $20 of electricity, for example, right?
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I can't find the underlying sensor that Home Assistant is using to generate that number. So I would love to be able to just, on a Lovelace dashboard, or even in an automation, if I've used more than $10 of electricity for the day, maybe disable my dishwasher so that I can't, run anything expensive for the rest of the day.
Right. So where is that number coming from?
Well, yeah. So there is.
I
found. Yeah. So the dollar. So I found an entity called sensor like cost. it seems to be an incrementing number per 24 hours.
Okay.
The problem I found is I restarted Home Assistant in the middle of the day,
And reset
and
to
it
0.
went to 0. So
Interesting.
if I'm
Maybe that's a
restarting
bug.
Home Assistant during the day, it won't give me that number. But it doesn't affect because I can still see, in my energy dashboard for today, like the number that I've used is greater than 2 cents.
Yeah.
So Home Assistant's got enough smarts to track that. I just can't see an entity or a way for me to grab that number out of the energy dashboard, slap it in somewhere in Lovelace, or put it into like an automation, or add as another sensor that I can then
Yeah.
create rules around. Hey, spent this amount of electricity today. We're going to turn the air conditioner off a bit early today.
Yeah.
or
Send
something like
you
that.
a notification or something saying, "Hey,
Yeah,
man, this is why we're doing this."
exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Sort of be adaptive sort of thing. So yeah,
I'm sure
hopefully
it's in there.
there's got to be some way to get it direct. Maybe there's an API call you can just make to Home Assistant itself to get it.
Potentially.
Because the front end's obviously getting it from the Home Assistant back end somehow.
Yeah.
But I'm sure someone smarter than me will message me somehow and then say, "Yeah, you idiot, it's right there in front of you."
It might just be a calculated number too. It might just be this times that minus this plus whatever, right? So,
exactly right. Yeah, so that's my eventual goal, just to try and be able to see, hey, using this amount of electricity, it's time to calm it down.
Yeah, and or it'll start trying to allocate, right? Like for example, like AC, for example, like we're going to turn it off right now.
Yep.
At nighttime, we have cheaper power, so run it through there, right? So like for us, for example, I have staggered power rates, so there's 3 power rates during the day. Just like
right,
essentially like peak off peak night kind of thing, right?
Yep.
So yeah, like so based on that, you can kind of say if you hit a potential target spend, then it's like okay, like it's almost like buying services from AWS, right? You can say okay, well, once I hit this limit of a upper dollar limit, then
exactly,
kill these instances or something like that, right? It's the same kind of deal where it's like, hey, alert me, or maybe even just send a notification, because maybe I do really badly need to clean my dishes or something like that, but send me a notification, be like, hey, if you can do it at night, do it at night. It'll save you $3 or $5 or whatever, right? So
yeah, that's the eventual goal, right? Like to get to that level.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, and I see a lot of use especially for folks with like solar and stuff like that, right? Where you are trying to optimize how and where you use your power, right? So cool. Well, I think that is the episode.
I think so.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone for joining us again. And Phil, thank you as usual.
Thank you. See everyone for 2022.9.
Cheers.
Cheers. If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@haspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant Podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics we discussed today, check out our show notes on haspodcast.io.